And we're joined by Kari Lake today with her new book, Unafraid. This is an amazing book. Kari, thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to talk about the book because everybody who's read it and gotten back to me says it's a page turner. I couldn't put it down. I was up all night, so I have you to blame for that, which I'm happy to take the blame on that one.
Absolutely. And you talk a lot about the news business in the book. I would like to start off with the book and Donald Trump doing the forward for it. That was pretty awesome.
It's amazing. I mean, when I asked him if he would do the forward and he said yes and agreed to it, I didn't expect such a beautiful forward to be written. And you can hear him when you're reading his forward, you can actually hear his voice. So it's a wonderful forward talking about the first time he noticed me as a candidate and recognized that we had and continue to have a massive movement here in Arizona. And I think, frankly, it's spread across the country. And it all really stems from when he came down that escalator and brought the America First movement to life and breathed new life into the Republican Party. So it's kind of connected. And we've also become friends because, we have a lot in common. We both had a victory stolen from us after putting our blood, sweat, and tears and heart into great campaigns, great policy, and helping the people.
And I know that you have been fighting for the governorship. You have not given up. Where are you in the courts at this point?
Well, I'll never concede. I will never concede because I know that we won this. And I know that in order to stop us and our movement of moms and dads and students and retirees and you name it, everyday Arizonans, they had to just rig and steal an election right in front of our eyes by sabotaging election day and then a bunch of other shenanigans as well. So we've moved it through the court system, and we are now on appeal. We just found out we've been moved to a different appellate court, not the one here in Phoenix, but the one down in Tucson, which is incredibly liberal. It's even more liberal than it's probably the most liberal part of the state. So we're going to continue to move it. This is the most important case in the country. And I know the fake news tries to tell everybody it's over, it's done. It's not. And we're never going to stop. We're going to push this as far as we can. And we're hoping to get it to the U.S. Supreme Court. This is a solid case. We can show with evidence provided by Maricopa County elections that they rigged an election. And so I hope people will get on board with it and support us with this case. I believe that we crack open this fraud right here at ground zero where the fraud is in Maricopa County in Arizona. And once we get one of these cases to go through and we get a judge who makes the right judgment with courage, I believe that we start to, I guess the dominoes start to fall. Somebody said the dominoes will fall in Arizona and it'll fall across the country. And so I'm very excited about our case. I am committed to this case. And I hope that the rest of America will take a look at it and get on board to help us with this case.
For people who don't follow the elections day by day or closely, what exactly is the election fraud? Because we hear the machines, then we hear kind of the Zuckerbucks, and then we have the mail-in ballots. It seems like it's coming from all ends. And as a voter, it's hard to figure out how you're going to fix it.
Well, I'll lay it out for you. The policies that the left is pushing out are full-blown Marxist policies and globalist policies. They want to change forever America and push us into a globalist world, which is really bottom line communism. They can't sell those ideas to the American people. The American people aren't on board. So for some time now, they've had to work at various ways of padding the vote for their candidates. And this is why they're so appalled and they hate populist candidates such as Donald Trump or myself, because it's really hard to pad an election for your chosen candidate when you have the masses behind another candidate. And that's what they've been doing for a long time. It goes with throwing in bogus ballots. In my case, about 298,000 bogus ballots with no chain of custody. The law requires you to have a chain of custody to know where every ballot came from. And there's about 300,000 in Maricopa County in my election with no chain of custody. Those are invalid ballots and shouldn't have been counted. But to me, the most egregious thing they did was on election day, realizing that as many phony ballots as they threw in on the front side, it would still not be enough to stop our movement. People showed up on election day in droves. 75% of the people showing up were voting for me. And they rolled out equipment that was broken. 60% of the polling locations in Republican areas, they rolled out this broken equipment that we know with video evidence and data, hard data, that they spent 3 days testing that equipment, making sure it would fail. And then they rolled out that failing equipment on election day. They printed the wrong image on the ballot on election day to jam up the machines, causing 4, 5, and 6 hour lines. People were walking away from line, unable to vote. And we know that half of the ballots that were voted on election day, those are the real ones where someone showed an ID, were spit out, unreadable. And they told people, don't worry, just throw them in this drawer or in this garbage bag and we'll take them down and count. People were disenfranchised. Our sacred vote was trampled on in Arizona. Those are just a couple of the ways they rig elections, but there's many, many more besides that.
So in order to get justice in your case, what is the ruling that needs to come down, even if it has to come from the Supreme Court? What is it we're looking for?
Well, I think what a judge has to do is show the courage to make a very bold ruling, which is look at the evidence and say, yes, there was maladministration, malice, fraud, however you want to word it. And we have to set Maricopa County aside. Those results we have to set aside because of all of these things, all of these laws broken, all of these procedures ignored. We have to set that aside. You can either set it aside and then count the state without Maricopa County, or a judge could say, we want to redo in Maricopa County. And this time you have to follow the law and the procedures. So there's a couple of different ways they could do it. Or the judge could just say, Hobbs is not duly elected based on the evidence here. It requires courage. It requires opening a Pandora's box. We're living in unprecedented times, and it requires unprecedented measures. However, I should say, this is not unprecedented in Arizona. Back in, I believe it was 1917, there was a fraud sitting in the governor's office who was not duly elected, and the duly elected governor fought that in court. It took a full year, and the courts finally ruled that the person sitting in the governor's office was not truly the governor. They removed that person and they put in place the duly elected governor. It has happened, and it's happened in Arizona before.
And I think it's only one state in the country that's happened before, Arizona.
I don't know about all the other states, but I do know it's happened here. And I do know with every fiber of my being that we have a mountain of evidence that this election was rigged. And I have no doubt about it. And the fake news likes to say there's no evidence. You know, these people who are saying that, they didn't even go to our trial. They didn't watch our trial. They haven't sifted through the 1,000 pages of evidence we have, and new evidence coming in every day. You know, we had to fight tooth and nail to get evidence through public records requests from Maricopa County. They dragged their feet and delivered it at such a late date, or even post-trial. They finally deliver us the cache of evidence post-trial, because they know how damning it is and they didn't want us to have it for our trial. This is the kind of crooked people we're dealing with. Well, and they think they're going to silence me. Now they're suing me because, you know, the people running our elections used to have a little hotline. Actually, it was an email hotline right to Twitter where they could just get people's tweets removed. They could get people silenced and canceled. They don't have that ability anymore, these Maricopa County folks running our elections. And because of that, they're in a panic because I'm putting the truth out. And now they're trying to sue me for putting the truth out. And they're hiring, they've got a bunch of Soros lawyers that are trying to sue me to shut me up. And I won't be stopped, and I won't be, you can sue me all you want. I'm going to keep going because I know the truth and I'm fighting for my children's future and our country.
I know you're not going to stop. I think it's interesting that we're having this conversation about election fraud, because it's this taboo subject that so many journalists are unwilling to talk about. Maybe because they're afraid of getting sued. I'm not quite sure.
I think they're afraid of losing their paycheck.
Yeah.
Because the corporate bosses won't let them. I understand it. I worked in corporate media for 30 years. And they won't allow these people to talk about it. When I go out and speak, people say, who do you trust in the media? I say, I only trust people who are willing to talk about the biggest story, the biggest threat facing our country, which is election fraud. And of course, we've got a problem on the border. That's why I had the most bold, aggressive border plan the country's ever seen. That's one of the reasons the people of Arizona voted for me. They want that illegal activity shut down at the border. But we can't get these great policies put in place to solve our problems. And we do have policies to solve our problems if we have rigged elections, and they're just installing people that they can control. And that's why I believe this is the issue of our time.
In your book, you say you never stopped being a journalist, and that it was really journalism that left you in a way. And I think it's interesting to have a conversation from two people who've been in the business for a couple of decades. I know so many great journalists out there, people, quality people, good people who want to do the right thing, but they're so afraid. And I would love for you to give some sort of inspiration and or message to those people to step forward and do the right thing.
Well, it first requires you to be willing to walk away from your paycheck. And that's difficult. I walked away from a 7-figure contract and at the pinnacle of my career. And that was not easy, but I was feeling that I was unable to get the truth out, even though I was the last gatekeeper as the news anchor. When you don't feel that you're able to get the full truth to the people. That's when I just said, this job is becoming immoral. And if I continue along doing it, then that makes me immoral. So I think people have to really do soul searching and be willing to walk away. And maybe when they walk away, they should put a video out like I did and explain why you're walking away. If you can't talk about the main issues affecting our country, then you are not a journalist anymore. You are a propagandist. And it's really hard for me to say that. I know there's some good people out there and they're thinking, well, as long as my bosses let me cover this issue, and maybe I can be critical about the climate change stuff that's we've been misled on, and we can nibble over here and talk about this and we can talk about that, but we can't talk about what's at the heart of all of our problems, rigged elections. If you're staying in that system, then it makes you a propagandist. You're losing your credibility. And you are, frankly, part of the problem. I have a really hard time watching the news now, especially when I watch people who I know, and I think, oh my gosh, they're stuck on that paycheck. That paycheck, I want to tell you, is not going to be worth much in a year and 4 months. If we have another rigged election, we're going to lose our country. And that's why I'm speaking as if my hair is on fire, because we've got a country to save and we have limited time to save it. And I believe that President Donald J. Trump is the only man who can really get in there and get the job done. And that's why I speak out on behalf of him. I'm just a mom now, a fed up mom. And I want to make sure that we get a person in the White House who's going to turn this nightmare around. And we have to root out the corruption. We have to root out this uniparty, which is made up of Democrats and Republicans. The swamp has to go. And I hate to tell people this is the hardest thing for me. The people of Maricopa County who rigged this election did not have D's behind their name. The Democrats did their usual. They harvested ballots and they found ways to, use the voter rolls to rig things. But it was Republicans, uniparty swamp Republicans who ran our elections, and they don't like America First candidates, and they don't want me to expose what they've done with elections in the past. And so they're the ones who rigged it. I also found out in the last couple of weeks that tens of thousands of voter registrations prior to mail-in ballots going out, somebody went in there and changed the zip code by 1 digit so that these tens of thousands of ballots would go out and be returned undeliverable. Then they could gather up those ballots and they could fill them out. There's just so many ways, so many shenanigans that they pulled to steal this election. And if we don't put our foot down right now, we're going to lose our entire country.
Well, it's absolutely unacceptable. And I'm so grateful that you've stepped forward and you've outlined this in your book. And when you speak, and you're so honest and truthful and unafraid. So
I will say, if there's journalists watching out there, the minute you step through that fear, and I talk about this in the book as well, when you cross over that barrier, that fear, and you get to the other side of it and you look down, you go, whoa, I survived. I'm still here. It's so freeing. And I didn't realize how controlling it was to be in a job at the corporate news. You don't have your freedom of speech. I am so happy. You couldn't pay me enough money to go back into that setting. There's no amount of money in the world that would allow me or that would make me go back into a setting where I couldn't speak the truth, because we're at a moment in our history where it's required of us to speak the truth. It's required of us to stand up to the corruption. That's our duty as American citizens.
To finish up, I think it's not only speaking the truth, but also speaking in an authentic way, because I always loved this moment. I paid attention to it when you were talking about, perhaps it was your first time going on Bannon, and you made your speech and you went back to him the next day, I think, and said, well, how did I do? And of course, I mean, you're fantastic. You're expecting him to say, oh, you hit it out of the park. You're amazing. And I think you were a little surprised because you tell the story.
Yeah. Oh, he read me the riot act. It was really, again, I was a 30-year journalist. I was a good, honest journalist, and I did not put my opinion out. Obviously, I loved President Trump. The minute he came down that escalator, I said, oh my gosh, finally somebody who understands what's happening and is going to save our country or help save it. And so, but you keep that to yourself. You don't broadcast that. So when I finally was freed of the shackles of working for the corporate media, and I decided to run for office after the people of Arizona recruited me, I went on Bannon's show, and I thought I did a pretty good job. And he texted me and he said, do you want my opinion how that went? And I'm like, yeah, of course. I thought he was going to give me kudos. He called me and he said, that was horrible. And I went, what? He goes, no, I mean, actually, it was great if I was interviewing a news anchor. But you are a politician, and you better start laying out your plans and not nibbling around the edges. I know you've got great policy, but you better lay it out. And you have the ability to do that now, and you need to do it. It was just so hard for me to train myself to be able to speak publicly my opinions. And once I realized that, he said, think about it, because if you don't start speaking really bluntly about where you stand, this isn't going to work out. And I took it to heart. I thought about it over the weekend, and I came back the next week, and I really started laying out what I saw as a vision for Arizona and for our country. And so and Steve Bannon and I have become friends. He's somebody who I lean on and appreciate his support. He did a lot of campaigning toward the end of our campaign for us as well.
Yes, you were out there cheering on the stud muffin.
Patriotic.
Patriotic stud muffin.
Modern day George Washington.
Well, thank you so much for being so brave. And the book is Unafraid, Kari Lake. You can order it. There it is. You can order it online.
I want to tell you really quickly, Allison, before we go, a lot of politicians write books. They write books because they're ready to go run for something. I wrote this in really one of the darkest moments of my life. Our election, our victory had just been stolen. I had people coming to me and saying, we want you to write a book. And I said, I'm in such a dark place. You might end up getting a like Stephen King type horror book. That's how dark my mind is right now. And then I thought about it and thought, maybe it would be therapeutic to start writing, because as a journalist, you naturally want to tell stories. And I'm so glad I did it. It was cathartic, therapeutic. It reads really fast, really conversational. Somebody just from our book event last night, we had people standing in line 2 hours to get the book signed. The night before, 3 hours, we had 400 people. And it was a man who wrote me. He DM'd me on, I think it was Instagram or something. And he said, I have not read a book in years. I'm embarrassed to say that. Your book, I just finished in one night. It is such a page turner, and I want to read more books now, because after reading your book, I realized how much I miss reading. I also decided to because I love seeing, I'm visual. I love seeing photos that go along with, the stories that you tell. So I have 48 pages of photos from my life and the campaign. This is a bit of a memoir, a bit of a how-to. There's a little bit of political history, political suspense. There's a real crime story in here. And I think that you will finish this book feeling ready to step forward and save this country. There's only one America, and we need to make sure we save it. There's no replacing this great nation.
Kari Lake, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story and sharing your time in this amazing book. Thank you again.
Thanks, Allison.